Thank you for tuning in to the Black Money Tree Podcast, hosted by entrepreneur, investor, and philanthropist Jerome D. Love. We are committed to teaching you how to build wealth so that you can build your community. At the Black Money Tree, our goal is to empower wealth creation and create economic self-sufficiency in order to empower generations to come. Society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never enjoy. Season 1 is powered by Wells Fargo Bank. Welcome to the Black Money Tree Podcast.
Welcome to the Black Money Tree Podcast. My name is Jerome D. Love, and I'm your host. And I'm so excited about the Black Money Tree Wealth Development Strategy, where our goal is to help you build wealth so that you can build your community. You know, growing up, my dad always told me, son, I want you to have your education. And he promised me that if you would go get your education, that he was going to pay for it. So he worked his entire life, no vacations, no eating out, no fancy amenities, just so he could pay for me, my brother, and my sister to go to college. You see, he believed that college was the key to building wealth. Well, when you look at statistics, there's a huge wealth gap in the African American community. And a big part of that wealth gap is debt. And a large part of that debt for many African Americans is student loans. So today, we're going to have a discussion to answer the question, is a college education overrated when it comes to building wealth? And to facilitate this discussion, we have one of this nation's elite minds. Dr. Glenda Baskin Glover is a JD, CPA, and a PhD, and she is the president of Tennessee State University and the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So thank you, Dr. Glover, for joining us on the Black Money Tree Podcast.
Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, so now let's go through it. You have a lot of acronyms after your name, JD, CPA, PhD. Tell me, is that your, I'm going to say, in your pedigree? Was that the type of household? Were your parents PhDs? What gave you this voracious appetite for education?
I grew up in a household where education was absolutely stressed. There was no choice of whether you would go to college. It was selecting the right college for you and the right HBCU. I guess it grew out of the education and social justice movement in my own home. I worked with my father many times on the front lines of the civil rights movement. So he said you get treated better when you know better, and when you're educated, you stress so much. What can happen if you're educated, properly educated. So I made sure that I would start with an undergraduate, and then with Tennessee State, I went to as an undergraduate. That instilled in me some principles to keep going. So you just keep climbing, and the higher you climb, the more successful the more success you would encounter. So that was the part I really enjoyed at TSU. That's the thing that it instilled in you about success and education. So starting at home, but it was solidified by my time at Tennessee State University.
So when we talk about education, of course, education can come in kind of two forms, if you will. A formal education, such as colleges, and then education in terms of skill sets and things of that nature. In our country, they're saying that there's a labor shortage, and many people are advocating more for jobs training. One of the things that I do is real estate and construction. And I can tell you now, there's a shortage of plumbers. I heard a statistic in the state of Texas that the average plumber is somewhere around 63 years old. I even told my son, you can go to college, but you can also work in the field. And I asked him if he wanted to become an electrician or a plumber. And he said an electrician because he was thinking of plumbers and toilets and things of that nature. So talk a little bit about that. There are a lot of people that will say skill sets are more in demand and then college, but what would you say?
Well, as a college president, I am a proponent of students attending college, even if college is not necessarily for everyone. Although I think I can take any student and make them a scholar. They still have to have some kind of college connection, whether it's a coding course, a continuing education course. Education should be for all African Americans. That is the way out. If it's not for everyone, then we can teach them what they should take advantage of. For example, let's use something current, the new infrastructure bill that talks about all the jobs and the infrastructure, and people are retiring electronic vehicles and electricians, and everything's going to be needed is it may not always involve a college degree. So you must have some vocational training. If you got 6 million jobs that are becoming open, and you go from 6 million jobs to like 20 million jobs in a matter of 8 to 10 years, we have to figure out how do we leverage the skill sets. Will colleges now start offering, will start stressing certificate programs? Will colleges now start looking at vocational training? People pursuing 4-year degrees may not necessarily fulfill those jobs that are becoming available with this new infrastructure bill. So I'm just saying we're shifting the conversation to how will college help to fulfill these jobs that are coming up. So for the job market to jump like that has to be opportunities for students, small businesses. You're talking about wealth development. So there's a lot that's going to happen over this next few years with this infrastructure bill.
Okay, I like that. So let me ask you another question. There's a book, it's called The Whiteness of Wealth by Dr. Dorothy Brown. I don't know if you've read it,
Of
but
course, yes.
she compares a college education to kind of buying a house. And she basically said that in research suggests that if a neighborhood is 80% white, then the property values tend to hold, and then you have a greater appreciation. So she said that if African Americans want to have more equity, they have to move into predominantly white neighborhoods. But there's a trade off. They're often racially profiled, they experience all kinds of duress, if you will. She also then talked about selective, predominantly white universities, and she kind of compared the two. Statistically speaking, African Americans will get a higher paying job if they go to a PWI, but they're going to experience many of the same racial prejudices by people who really just don't understand their culture. So she kind of said it's a trade off. If you want to have the economics, sometimes you have to go the PWI route or live in a white neighborhood. What would you say to that?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I like her writings. I think that she's just superb in her research. I just believe that the PWI institution, I think that was a dated thinking at one time that we all need to go to PWIs, even when they were not letting us in. We had to find a way to get into a PWI. Well, the HBCU world is where I live, what I defend vehemently. Just like almost in every conversation about HBCUs, you start off defending who you are and why you are. We're the only institution in the world where you start off defending yourself and defending why you are alive and why you must continue. And so, for the HBCUs to produce as many people as produce, and many the wealth that is created, the black middle class is created. There's no need to say you have to go to a white institution. There's no need whatsoever because HBCUs have it all. They produce some of the greatest minds this country would ever see, including the vice president of this United States. So that tells me right there that the HBCU community is alive and well and prospering.
Now, do you, as the president of Tennessee State, has done some historic things when it comes to fundraising and really advocating for HBCUs? And I think I just heard a little bit about your passion for that because you know the impact that HBCUs can have. So talk a little bit about your passion for HBCUs and how you have been so successful in raising millions of dollars for your institution.
Well, as a college president, I see firsthand the need for funding in black colleges and universities. I see the dilapidated buildings, the poor infrastructure, the lack of programs, the student scholarship needs. We see it at HBCUs. And so that's where the need was. So when I built my team in Alpha Kappa Alpha, and we said, let's do $1 million a day. Let's raise $1 million in one day and give it to HBCUs. They said, what? So, but that's my passion. But even before that, they said, we should do an awareness campaign of HBCUs. I said, awareness? Everybody's aware of HBCUs. We don't need awareness. We need money. So let's raise money and give it to HBCUs. We raised $1 million in one day for 3 consecutive years. In the 4th year, we doubled. We raised $2.3 million in one day. And it all went to HBCUs. So every HBCU 4 year that's accredited, I think it's 99. Well, 99 in total. We had a few a few community colleges in there too, received an endowment check from from Alpha Kappa Alpha on every campus now. There's an endowment from $50,000 to $100,000, so they can grow because endowments represent sustainability. And that is my passion. It became my passion when I went to Tennessee State, and then worked in the corporate world, and then came back to Tennessee State, where Jackson State first, then to Tennessee State. So that's where I live. That's the passion that I have for HBCUs.
So let's transition a little bit to Alpha Kappa Alpha and African American women. The Black Money Tree is about building wealth in Black communities because we believe that that's a critical component to us transforming the narrative within our community. We need to have the resources to change our own communities. When you look at African American women, depending upon the study, their average net worth is actually a negative value or typically on the bottom end of the spectrum compared to whites and even compared to African American males and others. What do you think it is that is lacking that has that statistic to hold relevant? And I know that the AKAs have an initiative on economic empowerment and education. So let's talk a little bit about that, and let's talk a little bit about what Alpha Kappa Alpha is doing to address this.
Well, let's start by saying the importance of building wealth among Black women, because Black women are the backbone of our democracy. I mean, we're the backbone when it comes to voting, the backbone when it comes to raising our children, and they may be seeing the dynamics in their households. Many single family households now where mothers run the house, they're providers. And so the opposite of that narrative is we have many African Americans with two-parent households. It's just that they don't get recorded. I'm an example. My children grew up in a two-parent home. I came from a two-parent home. It wasn't always, there were many challenges, but I grew up in a two-parent home. And so I don't want to lose that narrative and point to the picture of the national trend, because there are students and there are children growing up in two-parent homes, but we see the mothers struggling so much to make ends meet. I tell you, my mother could stretch a dollar with the tithes, the offering, the the grocery, the lunch to us. That dollar stretched so far. I just said I had elastic sometimes. So, but that's what Black women have learned to do, and I think because we do it so well, we make it look easy.
Wow, no, that's good information. I know I was in my mom and dad were together, and they were very conservative. Like I said in the intro, their whole thing was you're going to get an education.
Mm-hmm.
And, I am very happy with my education. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, but honestly, if I have to be truthful, I use very little of what I learned in the classroom in what I do day to day. I advocate for my kids to go to college, but I tell them to get an actual skill where they can get a job, as opposed to my parents just told me to go to college with no real direction. So talk a little bit about that. For a person considering going to college, what do you tell them? Is it important just to get a degree, or is it more important to get a specific skill set?
Well, going to college does not get you an education. We want students to be educated. You can go to college and even graduate and don't get the education. The focus has to be on, I'm here to keep focused, to know my mission in life. You start telling students, you would take students from, like I said, I came from a two-parent home, but it was a challenging home. We're not having money to make ends meet. But there are others who didn't come from a two-parent home. And we grab those students and we pour into them, let them know, listen, you can go as far as you choose to go. Don't let the limitations of the moment confine you. Yes, they have to go to college. They have to concentrate on college. And they can't let others deter them. I always use the example of Jesus, if I can go there for a moment. He knew his purpose in life. He came here to save the world. They called him crazy, even called him Beelzebub. But he kept straight on his mission. He knew his mission was, I'm here to save you and take you, so you will live right through eternity. So nothing stopped his mission. Oh, of course, he got mad in church one Sunday and beat a few people up. But other than that, in my profession, it's called assault and battery. Let that alone. But he kept true to his mission. And so I tell students, use that example. No matter what they may say about you, how crazy they may call you, you go forward what you know what God is destined for you to do. And that's what we try to pour into our students. They can know where they are at any point in time and not just be there because it's a college, but be there because you're going to receive something when you get there. You're going to take that and go into the global marketplace and be successful.
So now let's talk a little bit about the wealth gap. A big part of what the wealth gap that African Americans experience is a result of debt. And a large part of that debt tends to be student loans. A big part of that is just a lack of economics in our community. You can argue when you look at research suggests that a lot of colleges for non-African Americans is paid for from equity in home, grandparents, and things of that nature. So a lot of African Americans have more student debt, and that's contributing to the debt gap. What do you say to that? And does Tennessee State, and are you advocating for any policies that will help to alleviate that type of debt?
Um, you know, yes, Tennessee State stresses the literacy, financial literacy. And we have a lot of black families there. So financial literacy is not stressing our homes. Our families don't have the disposable income. So at TSU, we're changing that. We have a financial literacy program. The indebtedness we discuss with our students on day one. Have to borrow money sometimes. I'm not one of those presidents who talk about don't get a student loan because sometimes that's your only way to college. If you live on the other side of the track, you don't talk about cashing in a CD at your breakfast table in your conversations. That's not our population. We don't have that wealth. You mentioned earlier about the wealth gap. Our wealth, the biggest thing on our financial statement is a house. And we don't have the investment in XYZ company of stock. We don't have that on our balance sheets, not in most black families. So we take what we have. And so, yes, I think the debt situation has spiraled. But on the other part of that conversation is if a student has to have borrow money to go to college, let's just make sure we're there as administrators to assist them in borrowing the right amount. You're going to borrow money for a car or to wear the latest clothes and fashion. That's not what the student loan debt is all about. It's about you're getting a college education and you borrow precisely what you need and no more. So that's what we try to teach our students that don't overdo it with the wealth, with the loans, because that will come back and haunt you. But if you have to borrow, let's try to get you a scholarship or grant, get somebody to come by and say, okay, I'll take care of these 5 students for you. But if all that fails, then if you have to get a loan, get the smallest amount possible that you need to tide you over this semester.
No, that's great advice. Great advice. Now let's talk as we close about you personally. You have 2 children, I believe. I believe the son is a PhD and the daughter is a lawyer. Is that correct, or
Yes.
is it vice versa?
That's it.
So clearly they're following in your footsteps. How does that make you feel as a parent? And what advice would you give to someone who didn't really have the pedigree but wants to have their children to become a doctor, a lawyer, a PhD?
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel, and what advice would you give?
Well, children watch their parents. They emulate their parents. Those values are instilled in them. They do the same things we're doing. The legacy of leadership, the legacy of determination, the legacy of getting it done is just hard work. If you really want me to just cut you off, never speak to me again, call me lucky. Because there's no such thing as luck in the black world. We work hard. We get up in the morning. I get up at 4:45 every morning. Have my meditation. Have to exercise a little. Get on my treadmill. I'm on the phone and watching the news, MSNBC and CNN while I'm exercising on the treadmill. But you have a routine, and you have to start with that meditation and prayer. Because I said, Lord, I'm leading 2 organizations. I walk out that door, I'm going out in the world. I need you to go with me, guide me, help me make the right decisions. And they see their parents praying. They see their parents, working hard. And so I said, my daughter would say, I don't want to be a CPA. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be both of them. I said, then choose what you want to do. Let's help you stick on the track. My daughter went to Spelman. I would call every semester and fix her schedule for her. I was a business school dean at Jackson State University at the time. That was most annoying to her. It became a joke to her advisors. They would say, oh, it's Candace Glover's mother again. And, but that's what I do for a living. If I can do it for other students, so I got her on the right track. And now she is enjoying herself, and she is so appreciative. My son was a little different, but because he was always a math major and got a PhD in math. And so I'm proud of them, but by the same token, they worked so hard. It wasn't like they just said, okay, my mother is Glenda Glover, I can do this. No, they had to work hard, get their homework, stay focused. The parable, the Jesus we have to talk about. That was our motto in the house. Stay focused, not to the right or the left. You know where you're headed. Don't anybody stop you. Keep it going. Just keep it moving. That's what we did in our household. My husband and I both would push that right through.
No, I love it. I love it. So I'll close out with one final question that's somewhat unrelated. You know, I'm an Alpha, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin. And I remember my aunt is an AKA. She's one of your silver stars.
All right.
And I remember when I pledged, I became an Alpha. And I was so excited. I went to my aunt and I said, "Hey, Sora." And she just rolled her eyes at me because she went to Southern. And apparently, I guess Southern didn't consider the Alphas their brothers. And she was like, "Oh, many have wanted to be associated with the illustrious legacy of Alpha, Kappa, Alpha." And man, she really hurt my feelings. So I wanted to say, "Hey, Sora," when you came in, but I didn't know if that was appropriate. So tell me, does your chapter consider us brothers, or what is really the history of that?
Well, the history of our founder and your founder dating and getting married, and it was a beautiful love story. The founder, Ethel Hesman and George Lyle, just dated through college, and then when they got married, they kind of brought the two organizations together, and we just never separated. And so it just depends on where you are. The AKs have a love for Alphas. I'm married to an Omega. And one of my family members just been initiated to Kappa. So and then absolutely the Phi Beta Sigma and Iota, and we got cousins. So it's always a family. The Divine Nine has become so strong now and has gotten a lot of respect in the last few years because we know how to handle the situations at hand. We worked hard in the campaigns, like getting put out the vote. That was so important to make sure we had to get out the vote. So AKs and Alphas, there'll always be that bond. But it extends beyond that, though. It extends all the Divine Nines. She was just probably kidding with you when she said, "Don't call me Sora," because
she was serious. I never called her Sora since, but I never heard that story since. I didn't know that our founders did.
Yeah, they did.
But at least you can see I got my pink.
And I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Sora. It's been wonderful having you on the Black Money Tree. We appreciate your nuggets of wisdom. We appreciate everything you're doing at Tennessee State and everything you're doing for the African American culture.
Thank you very much. I look forward to coming back again.
Yes, ma'am.
What more can I say? One of the country's elite minds dropping gems on education versus skill sets. Education is critically important, and we strongly advocate for everyone, if possible, to go to college, but make sure you do it in a responsible manner. Manage your student loans, manage your student debt, and if not, there are a lot of trades and skill sets out there. But ultimately, just understand that college is an investment. So if you're going to invest 4 years of your life in $30, $40, $50, $100,000, make sure it's going to yield the return that you desire. So that's our episode for today. Make sure you tune in to the blackmoneytree.com website. We have all kinds of products. We have the new book release, Closing the Wealth Gap. And if you're really serious about growing your wealth, building your business, get our Business Accelerator VIP package where you can get 4 of my premier books as well as access to our VIP Real Estate Masterclass. Thank you for joining us on the Black Money Tree Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Black Money Tree Podcast. Don't forget to like and share this video. And if you want more content like this, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you next time.